Hello and welcome to the studio. I'm now joined by Ilan Barda, who is the CEO of RADiFlow. And Ilan, firstly, welcome to the studio. You've just flown in today, so thank you for making the time to be here. And one of the things that we were just talking off air about a little bit is a lot of commentators are talking about IT-OT integration. So there's more technology. Everything's connecting more and more. Sensors are connecting to grid. It's hyper-connected, right? but you come from a security world, and particularly cybersecurity. Just tell us a little bit about where you see, and it's not just about issues. It's just about some of the things that need to be taken into account from that perspective.
I think what is important to understand, as you mentioned, that there is now all this integration of IT and OT, and it's like if you look 15 years ago with all the IT involvement in the enterprise and in the telecom, the focus was very much about making it work, but afterwards you had to make sure that it's also secure. So I think we need to make sure that also in the utilities market, we think about security a bit ahead. So not just, first of all, make the IT-OT part working, because that's a challenge. That's not an easy task to do. But you need to already to take into account, and there is an opportunity because many things are just starting as a new deployment. You need to take into account the security as well from day one, and then it's a much better security solution if you take it into account.
So taking that a little bit, so when we talk about security, does it need a new view of security? And I want to explain my question a little bit. It's like internet first starts, security is download an antivirus software. Everything evolves a little bit and people go, hang on, that's not good enough anymore. We need security-aware networks. So we're putting security in the heart of the network. Now we're talking about a world where you've got sensors, not non-human beings also attached to it. Is there a whole different DNA to the security that needs to be put in?
Of course, it is. On one hand, you need to take the relevant things from the IT world, from the IT experience, all the security-aware, service-aware applications, and apply them to the utilities world. But there are differences in the OT world on two aspects, I would say, majorly. One is that this is a much more critical network, so you cannot do patches and download the new antivirus automatically every day. That will not work for a utility. And the second thing, which is a good thing, is that this is a much more deterministic network. The sensors are not just surfing online for Facebook or whatever. That will not happen with the sensors. So you can define the rules, to be able to define how do you detect some abnormal behavior. It's much easier to do that on the utility network than it is done on the internet.
So are you saying it's easier to detect abnormalities?
Exactly.
Right.
So I think that's the place where we should take this security for the utilities very much into this direction of detecting abnormal behavior, because we have the luck, I would say, that it is a much more structured network in terms of the behavior of the application. So we can use that to our benefit, while still not trying to do it incremental, but going 3 steps forward and use the best of breed technology that is already developed in the IT network and use that already in the OT network. I think that's a benefit that we should use.
And is there anything that's new about this joint companies are trying to create? Because some of the commentators are saying, okay, well, we're going to create the joint, but it's not the way I would traditionally envisage it, that there's a direct coupling. There's cloud services that are creating a layer over the top of that. Does that put a different dimension to it?
I think that the cloud services, of course, add another layer to the whole structure of the application, but I think that what you see also in the IT world is that you need to have defense in depth. So you should not just rely on the fact that there will be some security in the cloud, like you have on your PC also endpoint protection. You should have the same on the OT world. You should have protection on all the layers. The cloud services should be protected, but also the end devices should be protected. And in many cases, the end devices not necessarily are able to apply, because of their strength of their processing power. They are not able to apply all the levels of security needed. So there might be a need for some gateway functions which are anyhow there in the home or in the street or in all these kind of locations. So these kind of gateways can apply an additional level of security. So just to try and limit the level of the damage that can be done once there is already an attacker inside the network.
And some of the attacks, and this is like a commonly done with, well, you can secure everything, but then there's the human being who comes in and do that, you know. So how is the sort of security world, because again, with this sort of hyper-connectivity of the energy value chain, let's call it that for a second, you know, some of those highly dramatized doom and gloom scenarios aren't actually that improbable. You know, they could happen. So how do you sort of have technology that detects the sort of human attack in there as well?
Yeah, I think that also the humans inside this utilities world have a very specific role. So they are either the consumers or they are the technicians, so you can also limit their activities. So for example, there is now a whole new area about how to correlate physical security with the cyber security. So when a technician enters a substation, you can define dynamically some specific rules on the cyber level that will know that now this technician is coming, he should be able to do some specific things. So you should be able to limit also the functions that a human being is doing. And for that, you just need to make sure that you have a bit of a wider solution. So for example, combining this physical security and cyber security to know who is there. So for example, you can use your phone to just do face recognition to detect the technician now coming on site and now give him some limited access. So you can do all these kind of limitations, but the human factor should be taken into account on two factors. One, it should be limited per specific user. The other thing, it should be very easy, very intuitive for the user, because human beings never like something that is limited.
Exactly.
So it should be done in a very subtle way, something that you will not notice it, because otherwise the human beings will just find a way to bypass it. So you need to make it in a way that will still not be too challenging for them.
And on that side of things, we are kind of, again, what I wanted to explore a little bit is how seriously you think, I mean, everybody takes security seriously, but do you think that we need to actually step it up a little bit, or do you think enough attention is being paid on this?
I think that there is attention, but the problem is there is not enough understanding of the different solutions, so the technical capabilities are still lacking there. So I think that the engineering firms should take a stronger role in defining what is the kind of blueprints, what is good and what is bad, and we are working with some of the US entities to define this kind of blueprint solutions. I did not see that yet enough in Europe. I think also that the regulation is always one step behind, because they need to make sure that the technology is there. So for example, now insurance companies are starting to take a more active role in enforcing some of the newer technologies into the market. So I think that there is a general awareness, but it's not detailed enough. So it's just on a very high level. So there is a need for this kind of an ecosystem that will take it one step further in terms of the details. How do you apply service-aware security? What do you do on the endpoints? What do you do on the cloud? These kind of solutions, they are still not clear enough for the end users eventually.
And that comes down to standards. And when you talked about blueprints, is that being driven by the industry in the US, or is that being driven by is the industry almost saying, look, we don't want to wait until the disaster, you, the regulator, aren't moving fast enough, we're just going to go ahead of you?
From what I see in the US, we are working with two organizations like EPRI, which is the Electric Power Research Institute, with NIST, which has a specific lab for cybersecurity. And they are driving in cooperation with the utilities and with the private companies. They are doing this kind of cooperation in order to define solutions. I think that's a model which is very successful, because it is driving things a bit faster than what a regulator will do on their own, while in the same time it is done in cooperation with the utilities, so they are also giving their view. This is something that is feasible, this is not just something that we will just bypass eventually.
And you mentioned a little bit before, as we're coming to the end of our time here, and the party's already started, Ilan, so apologies for the background noise. But why is the speed in Europe slower than the US? I mean, what would you put that down to?
I think it relates to the general awareness of security in Europe compared to the US. In the US, the general atmosphere of cybersecurity is a bit more advanced than in the Europe. Europe feels a bit more secure.
Right.
So I think that's what is driving all the other activities, but I think that's a very important thing that we cannot ignore it. I think that will not change.
Yeah, it's like a human factor.
Yeah, exactly.
We
So
gotta
that's
put
something
it,
that is there and we cannot change it. So I think we just need to find ways to bring some of the things which are new in the US. Of course, apply the different relevant implications into Europe, because the structure of the networks is also different here than it's
Right.
in the US. So you need to apply some changes, but you need to work with these kind of global companies that are able to see the wider picture. Then you can take innovation from one place, apply it
Put
in
it to
another,
the
and
other.
vice versa.
Yeah. And do you think there's enough sort of transfer of innovation going on at the moment? Or?
Yeah, from what I've seen, it's starting, but not enough. I still see that there are, for example, in Europe, they are trying to do things from scratch and
Right.
not using enough what was done in the US. I see actually in Asia, by the way, they are more open to use what was done in the US as kind of a reference. So I think that in Europe there is still a way to
There's that
improve
reluctance.
Yeah.
We want to build it ourselves.
Exactly.
Maybe it's
We
that
know
whole,
better,
We
so-
know better. Maybe it's that whole engineering thing. But Ilan, lovely to meet you, and thank you for taking the time to be with us in the studio. Fortunately, we've come to the end of our time here today, and I hope you've enjoyed this, and we look forward to other interviews on Engerati.
Thank you very much.
Bye.